Hi everyone. I'm going back, way back to the first assignment I gave out from April 6th. So I'm going to try and do that week of assignments next so that people that, for whatever reason, maybe weren't online at that point, they can kind of start off with the video and hopefully it'll help explain some things. So for this video, the first thing I gave out was these 3 videos. I want you to watch these 3 videos. I want you to take notes on a separate sheet of paper. Once you take those notes, you can send me those notes via text or email. Well, actually, I don't have it on the Word document here, but it's all over. It's all over my Google Classroom, my contact information. So let's see. Once you watch these 3 videos, after you take your notes, go ahead and answer these questions, and then try to answer these 3 problems. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over I think number 2 and number 1. I'm going to do number 2 first, because I think that's actually more of a standard Pythagorean Theorem problem. So, let's see. And it wants to know what PQ is. Okay. Cool. Let me move this over here. Okay. So, I think first thing for any Pythagorean Theorem problem is let's just copy down the theorem. We know that it's a squared plus b squared is equal to c squared. Now remember, this theorem only applies to right triangles. If you can verify it's a right triangle because we got this box here. So this c is always the hypotenuse. So c will always be directly across from the right angle. So I'm going to label this triangle C. One of the first things I do is I like to label my triangle A, B, and C, so it fits into the Pythagorean theorem. So C is always the longest side, C is always the hypotenuse, it's across from the right angle. Now A and B, those are stand for the legs, and it doesn't really matter which one you say is A and which one you say is B. So I'm going to say this is A, I'm going to say this is B. So we're solving for C, A is 5, B is 2. So I'm going to use that that framework. So if A is 5, that means A squared is going to be 5 squared. B is 2, so B squared will be 2 squared is equal to C squared. So at this point, what's 5 squared? What's 5 times 5? So 5 times 5 is 25. What's 2 squared? That's 2 times 2. That's 4. So C squared is equal to 25 plus 4. So that's equal to 29. So a lot of people want to stop here, but we're not quite done yet. We have what C, we know C squared is 29. We want to know what C is by itself. So how do we get rid of this little 2 up here? And the way you do that is you have to take the square root of both sides of the equation. So I'm going to take the square root of 29 and take the square root of C squared. So in like a normal math problem, let's say you just had, so this is off to the side, so this is different. I just want to make a point here. If you had 3x equals 12, and you want to get x by itself, it's 3 times x, so you do the opposite of multiplication. You divide by 3 to both sides. And that's how these cancel. Because 3 divided by 3 cancels, it becomes 1, and 1x is just x. So this is 4. So I want to use that logic over here. Basically, if you take the square root of something squared, that's like, they cancel each other out, just like 3 divided by 3 does. The square root of something squared, or squaring the square root of something, they cancel each other out. So that basically leaves us with just our C. So C is going to be equal to the square root of 29. Now all we got to do, and I think you guys have a button on here, something like this. It'll be on your iPhone. The only thing that'll be different is it'll have a little 2 here. So 2 square root thing x. We're going to hit this button. I think it's in that region about. So we want to find out what the square root of 29 is. We hit 29, then we hit that button. And I get 5.38. Again, what your button will look like, it'll have a little 2 on top. So 5.38. And let's see. There it is, 5.38. So and because we're in inches, we got to put this in inches. And that's what PQ is. I think maybe I kind of brushed over that, but PQ is this side. So it's asking for this side. So fill that in right here, 5.38 inches. Okay, so we did this problem. Now I want to show you the slight difference that can happen. So I'm going to show you number 1 next. And then for number 3, you're going to decide, do I use the way I did number 1 or the way I did number 2? So for number 1. Alright, so first off, when I look at this, we got triangle ABC. And we're using the Pythagorean Theorem. We're using a squared plus b squared so with Pythagorean Theorem is a squared plus b squared equals c squared, and we're dealing with the triangle as ABC. This a, this b, and this c, they really correspond to the sides of the triangle. So what I'm going to do, just to avoid getting confused, is I'm just going to scribble out the letters here, because they're just going to get confusing. Because I could have labeled it X, Y, Z, D, O, G, doesn't really matter. So now that I scribbled out that stuff, now we can relabel our triangle ABC. So remember, C is the hypotenuse, so C is always across from the right angle. So here, C is the 15. Now, let's see. A and B are just the legs, so the 2 shorter sides of the right triangle. It doesn't matter which one you call which. So I'm going to call this one A, this one B. And we're trying to find this one where the question mark is. That was originally the BC that they gave you, but now we're just solving for the question mark. We're solving for B, for side B. So let's just plug all this information we can into the equation. We got 12 squared for A squared plus B squared equals C squared. So that's 15 squared. So what's 12 times 12? That's 144. And you can always do that on your calculator if you want to. There's nothing wrong with that. Plus B squared equals 15 squared. So 15 times 15. So 15 times 15 is 225. Yep, so 225. Oopsies. 225. I want you guys to be careful when we square something, we're not multiplying it by 2. I see a lot of people say 24 here. I see a lot of people say 30 here. You gotta square it. You gotta multiply the number that's being squared by itself. Okay, so this right here is a B. It looks a little funny. So 144 plus B squared equals 225. Next step. If we want to get, let's just say we had an equation that was, I don't know. Well, let's switch gears a little bit. I'm going to just change colors. Let's say off to the side. This is a different problem, but just want to show you guys the algebra is coming from. If I had something like 3 plus x equals 8, how do we get this x by itself? We'd have to get rid of this 3. So if it's 3 plus x, we got to subtract that 3. To both sides. So then it just becomes x is equal to 8 minus 3, which is 5. You can verify that 3 plus 5 is 8, so we're good. So I'm going to do the same thing here. So we got 144 plus b squared equals 225. We want to get b squared by itself. So I'm going to subtract 144 from both sides. So this cancels. It's 144 minus 144 is 0. Okay, so this one, 5 minus 4 is 1. Let me switch colors, actually. This is a 1. Gotta borrow 1, 12. 12 minus 4 is 8. And that's 0. Okay. So we got b squared equals 81. So what do we got to do now? If you remember from the last time, when you have something squared equals, how do we get rid of this square? We're trying to get b by itself. So what we got to do is got to take the square root of both sides. So square root of that, square root of that, these cancel. So this is going to be b equals the square root of 81. So what's the square root of 81? What times what gives you 81? Maybe you can recognize that that would be 9. If you can't, all you got to do is put 81 in your calculator, hit this button over here, you get 9. Okay, so b is 9, and that was our BC from earlier. We're in yards. And that's how you do this sort of problem. So I want you guys to figure out with this one, are we solving for C or are we solving for A or B? And it's going to be either the same process of 1 or 2, but either way it's similar. You start with the Pythagorean theorem, you got to label all your sides correctly.